Thank you very much, Mr. Balakrishnan. Honorable Ministers, Chief Secretary, very senior officers of the government, and those who are linked through the video conference, and one of my great friends and colleague, where we share some board meetings together. I liked the way you put it. You are a state that loves listening. If you permit me to extend that motto, listen, think, act. The whole state and this country, if it follows this path, I think can be transformed. What I'm going to do is to share some of my thoughts on the issue of getting agriculture back on track. I'll try to cover basically 4 areas. One, what is the state of agriculture in India as on today? And why agriculture is really so critical for India? Second, I'm going to take a little long-term perspective, at least of the last 10 years of agriculture, but also look into Indian agriculture with the global context. And then come to the real theme of my talk, how to fix it. If we are not doing a great job, then how to fix it? What is the option that India has? And then towards the end, I was told by Mr. Balakrishnan that I should also devote a little time on Odisha, in particular coming from the global to the national to the local situation, what it is and what can we do. I think you know more about your state than perhaps I do, but we'll have some occasion to talk on this in greater detail. Let me start with the basic question, why agriculture is critical for India. You know, earlier United Nations population projections were saying that India will be the most populous country by 2028. Lately, they have revised their projection and they say, not 2028, India is doing much progress in its population, and by 2022, India will be the largest nation on this planet, surpassing China. If that is so, the first is that everybody has a stomach attached and mouth to eat. So you have to have the food security of these people. India cannot be importing 40%, 50% of its stuff from outside. No nation can feed India to that extent. 5%, 10% here and there, you can export a bit and you can import something depending upon where you have your comparative advantage. But overall, food security is going to be a major, major challenge. It's going to be a double challenge if you project for the next 10 years. India's overall income is expected to hover between 7 to 8% GDP growth. With a population growth rate of 1.3% or even less in the years to come, you are going to have a per capita income which is going to grow anywhere from 5.5 to 6.2, 6.3% or so. These people who have remained underfed for decades, first thing that they are going to ask is eating more. Not only eating more, perhaps you and me will start talking about eating better. Little less quantity, but better food, which is more vitamins, more proteins, so-called high-value products. Therefore, third challenge that is going to come. By 2030, we are told, today we are about 380 million people in urban areas. By 2030, we are told we'll be 600 million people in urban areas. And urban areas normally don't produce the food. Food has to come from the hinterlands. Therefore, it's not only the rural population that needs to be fed whose incomes are growing, but also we have to create structures to feed those in urban areas, you and me, in the services sector, in the manufacturing sector, who are not related directly to food production. So there is a lot of challenge in the next 10 to 15 years that India is going to face. Given the land is limited, given that water is already under tremendous pressure, and water is going to be a bigger binding constraint than even land in the years to come, there is a big, big challenge on our face. What is the current state of affairs? But before I start on that, let me say one little thing. One more element because of which agriculture remains very critical in this country. Today we are talking India is a great bright spot. The IMF is saying 7.3, 7.5, 7.6, whatever between 7 to 8% rate of growth overall. But where the masses are, where 50% of the country's workforce is engaged, what's the rate of growth there? Last 2 years, 14-15 and 15-16, the agriculture rate of growth, which engages 50% of the workforce of the country, is less than 0.5%, less than 0.5%. To be exact, 0.45% per annum average of last 2 years, 14-15 and 15-16. And that should be a cause for worry, that where the masses are, that particular sector is not just stagnating, but its growth is even below the population rate of growth. That means the per capita income in agriculture during the last 2 years has actually declined. And that's a political question I want to put before you. Is this the development model we want, where the rest of the economy grows at 7%, 8%, 10%, but where the masses are, that grows at less than 0.5% or 1% or less than 2%? Is this the model that we are looking for? Obviously, nobody, including the present government, would agree to that. Traditionally, when we look at most of our plans since 91 onwards, have kept a target overall of the economy 7 to 8% and agriculture 4%. And I think that's on a very sound footing and well calibrated after doing a lot of work within the Planning Commission and now the NITI. But what has been the story? Last 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, long-term perspective if we take, let's take it from 2005-06 to 14-15, last 10 years. The agriculture growth has been 3.6% per annum. So not too much below, respectable, 3.6% per annum. Now, if 3.6% is the last 10 years, last 25 years, if you take from 1991 or 91 onwards when the reform started, Indian agriculture has grown at around 3.2% per annum. So it's below what has been the target, 4% has been the usual target. But 11th plan, if you look only those 5 years, agriculture grew at 4% per annum. What was exactly the target? In fact, 4.1% per annum. And there is something interesting that happened during that period. If you look at, and that's the point I want to emphasize here, if you look at, since the reform started from 91 onwards, between 91 or 93, the data that we have from NSS, to 2004, and then from 2004 to 11, in which the 11th plan also falls, the rate of poverty reduction, whatever the way Planning Commission had been measuring, you may change the definition, but the rate of decline would be roughly the same. The rate of decline of rural poverty has been 3 times faster during 2004 to 11 than during 93 to 2004. I think this was never witnessed in the earlier history of India. And one of the factors, and I think the important factor, was that agriculture during this period has been growing. 11th plan was 4% per annum, and overall about 3.7, 3.8% per annum during this period. So there is an important lesson that if agriculture grows faster, poverty reduction can be very, very fast. And let me bring here some international perspective. We should not look only at Indian experience, but what is the experience globally in developing countries. And let me bring in a country with which we aspire to compete, and that's China. Let me spend 2, 3, 5 minutes on China's story. China did not start its economic reforms with manufacturing or smart cities or exchange rate or trade policy corrections. They started off with agriculture. I would submit to you, imagine an economy like a pyramid where the bottom is agriculture, the middle is manufacturing, and the top is the services sector. And normally the largest amount of labor force is always in agriculture. And what did they do? Between 1978 to 84, 6 years, first 6 years of reforms, they concentrated on agriculture. And you must have read at a number of places, they dismantled the commune system and went in for household responsibility system. That means giving land to the tiller in terms of you can now have your own. But what is not known in literature that much is that they liberated the agriculture prices. They used to control, like we control agriculture prices always. And as a result of that, the agriculture GDP between 78 to 84 increased at 7.1% per annum, but farm incomes, because they liberated the price regime, increased at 14% per annum. 14% per annum if the farm incomes were increasing. Within 6 years, China was able to reduce its poverty by half. 50% reduction in poverty in China, which India achieved in 18 years. 93 to 2011, we took 18 years to half our poverty, whereas China took just 6 years, because the way they did, they fired the whole bottom, the pyramid, economic pyramid from the bottom. That created huge incomes for the rural economy, which started demanding industrial goods. And what were they demanding? More TVs, more refrigerators, from bicycles to two-wheelers, and then small four-wheelers, and so on and so forth. Most of these commodities were being manufactured at that time by small scale, what was called the town and village enterprises. And they could not cope up with the demand that was coming from the rural areas, and therefore they started investing in a major way in scaling up the manufacturing to satisfy the demand coming from the rural areas. And as a result, the manufacturing revolution started. It was not done by the big manufacturing companies, it was done by the town and village enterprises of China. People started moving out of agriculture to those types of manufacturing. Manufacturing started growing. Today, that's the global hub of manufacturing. China's services sector, the top layer of the pyramid, is still on a shaky ground. It's not the strongest thing. What did we do? The elephant's pyramid, if you look at, if we can feel proud of one thing globally that we have done wonders, what is it? It is the IT, which is at the top of the economic pyramid. So the techies in Bengaluru may be getting global salaries, and maybe their maids and drivers will get some better salaries, but that's a trickle-down effect. Manufacturing, IIP index is 1%, minus 1%, plus 2%, 1%, we are still struggling. And agriculture, has anybody talked about the agenda for reforming agriculture in the last 25 years? We haven't heard. So our story is coming from the top, a trickle-down effect, and we take 18 years to halve poverty. China's story is firing from the bottom and halving poverty in 6 years. That's the difference, concentrating on agriculture or coming from the top. I was recently in Marathwada when there was a crisis of even drinking water. And when I visited places, I was told that the drinking water is coming after a week or 10 days. How do you get water for your crops and for your cattle? That was the scenario. Now, under that scenario, I don't want to criticize any state or any particular CM or policy makers, but I read in the newspaper that there is a bullet train which will take away 90,000 crores, Ahmedabad to Mumbai, and the CM was to go to Japan for that. And suddenly it struck me, what is the priority of the country? Should it be drinking water? Should it be saving crops? Should it be saving cattle? Because that's where millions will benefit. But if we are giving a priority to bullet train, 90,000 crores, then who is going to benefit? You and me. So that unwittingly, unknowingly, there is an elitist bias, the urban bias in our policy making that we have to be very careful about. And that brings me to the basic political question. What is the role of public policy? Everybody has aspirations. You have your aspirations to become better, I have my aspirations, but the poor man also has aspirations. The role of public policy, of course, it has to encompassing all the citizens of the country, but it has to be more and more those who are left behind. Proportionately, you have to take care of them more so that otherwise, if the distance keeps increasing, there is always danger of implosion. Luckily, Indian society is very tolerant from that point of view. It has tolerated poverty for so long. So I would like to submit that agriculture remains critical both for India to feed its largest number of people, and it makes good economics and good politics also. Okay, let me talk about if we have not been doing 4%, we have been doing last 10 years 3.5, 3.6%, or 25 years 3.1, 3.2%, how can we get 4%? And personally, I feel the potential of this country's agriculture, it can easily go up to 5%. Many times we hear, oh, our farmers are very small. How can they grow? What can they do? So our holding size is 1.16 or 1.15 hectares, the latest census. So what can they do? Let me give you a parallel from China. China's average holding size is half of ours, 0.6. And their production is more than double of ours from a cropped area that is less than ours. From a total cropped area which is less than ours, holding size half of ours, but production is more than double of ours. So how have they done it? If they can do it, why can't we do it? Many a times we also hear, agriculture is a state subject. What can the center do in this? Was Green Revolution in this country brought by the states? It was a decision taken by the center. It was a strategy planned at the center. Of course, Delhi cannot grow all the wheat or rice. States have to pitch in. But a strategic move was at the center. The second biggest revolution that India has experienced in its agriculture was the White Revolution. Milk. And to give you just one little example, in 1951, India's milk production was 17 million tons, 1-7. US at that time was 53 million tons. Today, US is about 91, 92 million tons, and India, anybody, any guess? 145 million tons. 145 million. I think many of you are of my age here who remember those days we used to stand in the queue for 2 hours to get 2 liters of milk. Today we are the largest producer of milk in the world. And we are still processing only 20% of our milk through the organized sector. There is a huge potential to go forward. And that revolution was brought about in Anand, Mr. Kurian, who did the institutional engineering. It was not new technology. The Green Revolution was bringing in seeds from outside, 18,000 tons of Lerma Rojo and Sonara 64, the 2 seeds that came from Mexico, ushered in the Green Revolution. Those seeds were the catalysts and seeds were not ours. Remember this, it was coming from outside. But White Revolution was ours and there was no seed, it was just institutional engineering. Innovation in aggregation, innovation in putting the whole value chain system in place. And we saw the wonders of that. Last 15 years, there have been 3 mini revolutions within Indian agriculture. Cotton is one. If you look at, and that's Mr. Balakrishnan, if you permit me some commercial advertisement, that is the piece today in Indian Express and Financial Express. The 2002-03 and whatever cotton production is today, 170% up. And it was, the catalyst was the seed BT cotton. We may agree on BT questions and all the debate. Today, 95% of cotton area is under BT. It did not happen even for wheat or rice. It is the biggest revolution. And these seeds again came, and this time not from CIMET or any public institution globally, but by one of the biggest multinational in the world. Monsanto, Mexico collaborated and brought those seeds. There is another, now if you had not brought in that seed and business as usual had prevailed in cotton, we would have been today one of the biggest importers of cotton. I have worked it out in that paper that we would have imported about $25 billion worth of cotton between 2002 and 14-15 if those seeds were missing. So there is a saving on potential imports of 25 billion. But we became net exporter. We are the second largest exporter of cotton in the world. And between 2002 and 14-15, we exported cotton to the worth of about $21 billion. And because of extra cotton that was produced, there was extra yarn compared to business as usual scenario that was exported, which was about $10 billion. So in total, about $55 billion of net savings and exports that the nation gained by one major decision that was taken by NDA 1, 26th of March 2002 under the leadership of Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was convinced that biotechnology is a revolution in the offing and India cannot stay behind, it must lead. $55 billion to one decision taken on 26th of March 2002. Similarly, I can go on and on. There is a revolution in hybrid maize, doubled the production. There is a revolution in Pusa Basmati. Very fascinating thing has happened. But the point I want to hammer, because you said bring in some global thing, that these seeds, except the Pusa Basmati, which was ICAR, are coming from big multinationals. And why they are coming from big multinationals? Whether it was BT cotton or hybrid maize, much of that is private sector and multinationals. You look at ICAR, sir. Our ICAR, which is supposed to be giving us research-based, science-based seeds, in 14-15, the budget of ICAR was 4,850 crores or so, which is $0.8 billion at that exchange rate. Monsanto, just one company in the world, in that year invested $1.7 billion on R&D. This is a clear indication that the future technologies in agriculture are going to come more and more from the private sector. So there is not that CIMMYT and IRRI which will give you free. Those who have invested billions of dollars, they would like to take some rates of return on those seeds. Now, what is the mechanism through which we can buy those seeds and give our farmers free, or they can have licenses and trade fees and royalties? And have you heard lately, just 3 weeks back, China Chemicals, ChemChina, bought one of the second largest, Syngenta, $43 billion cash. 43 billion. What are they trying to get? They are trying to get all those technologies which Syngenta had. And they are looking at 20 years of food security for their country, 30 years of food security. $43 billion deal just on cash like this. So globally, what has happened? The world has moved from green revolution to gene revolution. And actually, today, the gene revolution is in about 185 million hectares of land across a number of countries, more than 40 countries. But the next revolution has already started, and that's called the brown revolution. People know Monsanto because of their BT cotton seeds. They don't know Monsanto, that Monsanto has bought Climate Corporation and has tied up with John Deere, and actually looking at the US land grid-wise, literally each kilometer of area, as the harvester is harvesting the crop, they can take the sample of soil, analyze it right away, whether it is deficient in N, P, or K, send that information on the cloud, computing is done, order is given to the tractor, there is a small simple machine that how much N and how much P and how much K to release, how much is the moisture, everything is in auto mode. This is called the brown revolution, the precision farming. As a result, their maize yields, if you drive from Illinois to Iowa, you find that entire belt anywhere from 9 tons to 11 tons per hectare. Our average is 2.5 tons per hectare. So that revolution has already started. That's not GM, it is precision farming, caring about earth, mother soil, earth, and that is one way. I think that is where the future is likely to be, more sustainable agriculture and more precision agriculture, and looking at how this massive computing ability. And India, if it has benefited so much from IT and satellites, and we take proud of sending mom to Mars and all those things, unless those at the top of the pyramid link up with those who are at the bottom of the pyramid and try to bring science and technology for the benefit of masses, I think as scientists we would have failed otherwise. And that was one of the visions that Mr. Vajpayee had. So we need to move from green to gene to brown revolution. You can skip gene revolution if you don't like genetic modification, but go to precision farming. We can do that. Okay. I have another 7, 8, 10 minutes. how to get 4% rate of growth in agriculture. The first thing that we need to do, there are two things that matter to turn around agriculture sector. One is the technology that we talked about. The other part, and that is a sad part of the story, because I have been in the corridors of policy making in Delhi, and I find the entire policy making of agriculture, or 80 to 90% of that, is pushing higher production, higher production, higher production, without ensuring who will buy this. So it is more from plow to plate. That era when there was huge shortages in this country, whatever is produced will be consumed, that is not anymore. Today we have to look and put the whole thing upside down. It is plate to plow. What the consumer wants, look for that. Not only in India, but outside India. So look for the markets first and then streamline your entire value chain. Agriculture of tomorrow is not farming alone. The two sides of the same coin, production and marketing. If you can't give 50% weightage to marketing, you are likely to end up into a situation where the farmer produces, has a bumper harvest, but potatoes are thrown on the roads because they are not recovering even the cost of production. 2 rupees a kg. That is what is going to happen. So we have failed miserably on the marketing part of this. And I think that is where the value chain approach, and we need not go to anybody else in the world for that. We have done ourselves in milk. How we have done in milk? We have connected Delhi and Mumbai and all these mega consuming centers with the production centers. And we have put in investments in the logistics, from aggregation at the farm level, in the villages, societies, put a chiller there, then have the logistics to transport it and process it, and then within 24, 48 hours, it is delivered to the consumer. The same thing needs to be done in fruits and vegetables. That's where we are failing. Our wastages are one of the highest in the world. We were chatting yesterday whether cold storage is a solution or not. Cold storage is only a little part of the story. You look at the vendor who is selling it. Now, on his push cart, if the temperature is 44 degrees and at night he is not able to sell the entire produce, next day his produce, because he doesn't have refrigeration, and therefore next day his produce will be half the price. So there is a huge value loss. Why can't we do simple things? Make that push cart a new design with a solar panel at the top, a little refrigerated thing right there. There is a display section. Any engineers, just 5 engineers, 2 engineers in IIT, Delhi or Kharagpur, anywhere, they can put it in place, and you can bring about a revolution of how to have organized retail. Call it the Amul model. Amul is selling its ice creams on commission basis at 14% commission that they give. And it is selling every corner. You can have one of your tribe's persons, many of you may be knowing, who has just sought voluntary retirement, is doing Ola Sabzi Wala. Like Ola cab, you can track where it is and can ask to come home anytime. Actually, you can have the Sabzi Wala coming to your house anytime that you want. So that new venture is in the offing right in Delhi by one of your people who was making all these farmer producer organizations, Pravesh Sharma. So he has started off this new venture, and let's see, some interesting things will come up. Ola Sabzi Wala. So point that we want to say is that we need to create value chains which can save the wastages and link up the consumer with the producer, shorten the entire value chain, and therefore a higher percentage of the consumer's rupee can go to the farmer. If we can do that, we can turn around agriculture, not 4%, but 5%. Therefore, my submission is, once we have fixed up certain basic things on the supply side, that is production side. We must make our focus more and more on the marketing side and how to lay down an efficient value chain. That is the mantra. Just wheat and rice or even coarse cereals that you were talking about are not going to take you far enough, because the demand for cereals, per capita consumption of cereals will be falling. People's consumption patterns are going to be shifting towards more of protein and more of vitamins. That is milk, dairy products and livestock products and fruits and vegetables. So I think that share will keep on increasing, and it will require a very fast moving infrastructure, much modern infrastructure, and that is where big investments from domestic as well as from outside can come in, and that will provide a lot of off-farm employment in the rural areas itself. That is the mantra to turn around agriculture in India. Now, I was told that 5 minutes I should also speak about Odisha. You know, when I was looking at Odisha's agriculture growth, and I was surprised somewhat that it's last 10 years, you correct me if I'm wrong, but my office worked it out, 2.4% rate of growth, average annual. There is volatility, of course, and depending upon the years that you put, but I'm taking, let's say, 2005-06 to 14-15. What amazed me when I looked in comparison to all India or the higher growing states, the irrigation cover in Odisha is way below, 35-36%. The untapped potential of irrigation is still huge. Groundwater, the electricity consumption we are talking, electricity consumption of the total electricity consumed in the state, only 1.3% is going to agriculture, only 1.3%. That means groundwater cannot develop without having power, because through diesel it is a very, very expensive proposition. So unless water is under control, better seeds cannot take you very far off. Fertilizer consumption is less than half of the all India average. All India average, don't talk about Punjab, Haryana. Punjab, irrigation is 98%. Fertilizer consumption, 200, 250, 300 kilograms. Odisha, 50 kilograms, 55 kilograms. So don't talk of, but even the all India average, you are way below on that. Therefore, you know, I had an occasion to talk to some senior policy makers in a state, because last 10 years, the highest rate of growth is Madhya Pradesh. And I talked to the chief minister. I said, sir, your state agriculture is growing even faster than Gujarat had grown. What is it that you did? He said, in first phase, I concentrated only on 3 things: water, irrigation, bijli, and sadak. Bijli and irrigation, both surface and groundwater, so that was water and roads, basically. This was his first 5, 7, 10 years agenda. And now he is looking at building value chains of high value agriculture, the corridors for livestock or fruits and vegetables, and how to take it forward. So I think Odisha, to me, I think we need at least half a day session on discussing details and the analysis of Odisha. My understanding, very little one and very preliminary at present, is that the basics of Odisha compared to all India average of irrigation, of power supply to agriculture, and the surfaced roads, these are way below. And no wonder your seed replacement rate, your fertilizer consumption is half of what is all India average, not the top performers, all India average. So if you can fix these 3, 4 interventions, I think you can easily go to 4% rate of growth, if not higher. But Odisha has lately done some interesting things we are watching on vegetable front. Some turning around has come in the vegetable, but vegetable prices are highly volatile. If they produce more, prices crash, and that's where value chain and food processing has to be looked at. I think those are the preliminary things that I can put on the table. My time is up. What I would like to conclude by saying, well, thanks for inviting me. These are some of the thoughts which we have looked at India in a longer perspective and what is happening right now in India on the agriculture front. And I feel Indian policy making is still somewhat urban biased. It is still elitist. We get good joy in saying, oh, bullet trains, 100 smart cities, which is all fine. Make in India, but give me 4% rate of growth in agriculture. That's all. But if it is less than 2% and less than 0.5%, then there is a crisis staring at your face, and we don't want a society when you're driving your car and you stop at the red light and there are 4 beggars around you because they have moved from rural areas, there is existence problem. We don't want that type of a society. With all these words, I'm sure India will bounce back, agriculture growth will be back. The present government is looking at this budget. They tried to do something, but it's still not that bold a move as I would love to see it. We are in touch with the Delhi government. We'll be happy to share any thoughts or any analysis that we have on Odisha, and our services are all free. Thank you.